Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's your girl Natasha, and if you're new to my channel, then welcome. So somebody commented on one of my videos asking for a comparison between Zambia and Canada, and I decided why not make a video. I have 10 points here. I'm going to be reading them off of my phone, comparing basically Zambia and Canada. So let's get right on to the video. Number one, transportation. Based on my personal experience, I think you would need a personal vehicle in both places. Start with Edmonton specifically because I haven't lived anywhere else in Canada. In Edmonton, we do have public transit, which means like we have like buses, and we also have trains that go from different parts of the city, and it is owned by the city, so it is very well structured per se. You can check up bus timetables and whatnot online, and it's pretty easy to maneuver because of the fact that obviously everything is so well put together, as opposed to obviously in Zambia. We do have a bus system as well. But the buses are privately owned by like private owners, so it's not owned by the city. Lusaka has these buses that run around different parts of Lusaka. They're privately owned, and most of the time they do not have like a set schedule. You basically go to wherever and stand and wait for a bus to come along, and then they have these like undesignated bus stations that you can stand by and a bus will pick you up. Number two, food. Okay, let's start with the taste of the food. On the basis of my experience living in Zambia, living out here, I would say Zambian food is by far more tastier. Not per se like cultural foods, I mean like actual food that you purchase from the store, like let's say you buy your meat or like bread, stuff like that. It just tastes so much more better, I think, in terms of it being more organic, more fresh, just all the things that I think down here you can't find. I think even just the taste of a lemon here is totally different from a lemon down there. Like the taste is totally different. I do love the Zambian food more because of the fact that it's more organic and it tastes better. Canadian food, on the other hand, like food from the grocery stores, it's so like you can't really taste that you're eating meat or you're eating ground beef, or even just simple things like rice. Like down in Zambia, if you buy some rice and you cook it, you can smell like that you've cooked rice, and it smells so good. In terms of cost, I think the cost of food out here is so much more expensive than in Zambia. Yes, obviously we're going through a financial crisis all over the world, but the cost of food in Zambia, yes, has gone up, but is still relative and affordable. And yeah, if you're paying for organic food, I would say it should cost more. But yeah, guys, the cost of food has gone up in both places, but it's more expensive out here than it is in Zambia. So number three, I didn't even know how to label this one. So just, I think, customs in terms of time. So like what I've noticed about how things work in Zambia is that, let's say you go to a formal office and they do give you like a time frame and say, hey, it's supposed to take this long, but we all know back home things move so slow. And I feel like people down there live in a bubble. Like things work so slow and everybody does everything in their own time. You have things like, for example, lunch hour. In Zambia, they take like a 1 hour lunch break from 1 p.m. till 2 p.m. In Canada, on the other hand, everything works with time. Like, everything's so punctual, just like I mentioned in the transportation situation. Everything is so like scheduled, it's punctual, it's, you know, like they'll give you a time frame. Let's say, for example, I had my son in 2021, and it literally took them almost 2 years to give me a birth certificate for him. From the time I applied, he was like probably less than he was 2 weeks old. I applied for a birth certificate for him, and that birth certificate just came like recently. So like, as opposed to when I applied for a birth certificate for my children here in Canada, it only took like 2 days and it came in the mail. So those are things. I think punctuality in Africa, or Zambia per se, is so different compared to like punctuality over here. I think everything is so laid back and relaxed down there, as opposed to like over here. Driving culture in Canada or in Edmonton, you drive on the left hand side, and in Zambia we drive on the right. And the two things that I noticed about the two different places is, obviously we have bad drivers in Edmonton. Like, it's just, yeah, like really bad drivers. But I thought Edmonton was bad until I went down to Lusaka. I literally it's still a miracle up till today that I'm able to drive in the congestion. It's just like, everybody's always in a hurry. I know here in Edmonton, people are always in a hurry, but trust and believe, Lusaka is a totally different situation. I know I've had situations where like I dropped off my mom like at her house and I was headed back home. And trust and believe, something that should take a 45-minute drive from her place to my house, it literally took, not really 45 minutes, about 30 minutes or so. It took us almost 3 hours to get back home, because there's always congestion, especially if you're driving. Like, there are time frames that you need to be able to avoid being on the road, because you will literally sleep on the road if you're not careful. So yeah, I think for the most part, when it comes to traffic over here, traffic is only made if somebody's like gotten into a car accident or whatever, and like people are trying to get home and like it's rush hour or whatever. But back in Zambia, it's like there's always congestion somewhere, and so you gotta literally run your errands during a specific time frame, or else you will get home in the middle of the night. So yeah, the comparison is sort of. Number 5, clothes. So I noticed that in Zambia, things are so much more expensive when it comes to just simple clothes, like a t-shirt, jeans, stuff like that. I know things are imported over there, but the cost of clothing in Zambia is crazy. And I think people who have gotten into business selling clothes have taken advantage of the market. They know that there are no clothes that are like really great quality, and so they take advantage of the fact that, okay, if I import great quality stuff, I could charge an arm and a leg. And trust me, for the past couple years that we've been there, I have bought clothes here and there in Zambia, but trust and believe, if you are moving to Zambia, make sure you either buy a whole bunch of clothes or you order your clothes online, because the cost is crazy for both adults and children. When it comes to Edmonton, on the other hand, I have noticed that things are so much more cheaper in terms of clothes, because there's always sales. So like, obviously clothes are expensive if you're paying full price, but the sales here are so crazy that like you could literally buy a whole bunch of stuff for a whole lot less as opposed to back home in Zambia. So I would say, yeah, and also another thing I noticed is the quality of clothes. So over here you could buy a nice t-shirt for about like $10, $5, sometimes even less if you have like great sales. Depending on obviously the brand and stuff. Like if you shop at Walmart like I do, then you'll get a nice t-shirt for about $5, maybe on sale and whatnot. But back in Zambia, you cannot find a t-shirt that's gonna be $5. Like stuff are so expensive to the point where it's like they never have sales. The sales are just literally non-existent, because when you look at the so-called sale, it doesn't really equate to how we have sales in Edmonton. And so like even the quality is just not there. Like the quality of clothes and the cost does not equate. So yeah, guys, if you're thinking of moving to Zambia, that's a business idea. And yeah. Number 6, visiting. So one thing I have noticed, the culture in Zambia is very, very open. People love to be around people, and like it's such a social community in terms of like the people that you're around, as opposed to obviously here in Edmonton. You have a situation where like over here, if you're gonna go visit someone, you have to call in advance and make like an appointment and say like, hey, I'm gonna be coming to your house so and so day at this time. And like everybody knows, okay, this is what's gonna happen. But in Zambia, on the other hand, people come to your house unannounced. And trust and believe, I've also taken into that culture of going to like obviously my grandma's house. Like actually I usually call, but I had like obviously sometimes to my grandma's house I'll literally like pop by without calling. It's just like that culture of openness that I enjoy about obviously being over there, is the fact that like you can literally go to somebody's house unannounced, and like you'll find them at home. If you don't find them at home, obviously you'll give them a ring and be like, hey, I'm at your house. But for the most part, everything is so open, and like people are so welcoming in terms of that type of cultural practice. Number 7. So one thing I noticed about Zambia and like the difference between Canada is that they use cash for everything. I know like North America or just like Europe, other places, we're so used to using our debit cards and especially credit cards. But one thing I noticed is the difference between the two places is that you see people use cash less in places like Canada as opposed to obviously in Africa or like Zambia in general. Like everywhere you go, you must have cash, because God forbid you leave your house and you have no cash. The chances of you being able to use your debit card, unless you're going like to the mall or like a store that has one of those POS systems, you will not be able to pay for anything. And I have made it literally a point to always carry some cash. Even at the gas station, you must have cash to pay for your gas, because sometimes the POS systems are down. And so like you'll have a situation where like you're running low on gas. Make sure you have at least some small cash that you can be able to, you know, pay for your gas and whatnot. So yeah, and over there, I don't know if they use credit cards. I don't think I've seen anybody mention anything to do with credit cards, and they don't have anything that is basically bought on credit. Like it's very rare that you'll buy anything on credit. And I think the credit that they have over there is completely different as opposed to like how we have like the credit system and whatnot. And so everything is bought by cash. Number 8, Maids. So in Zambia, we have maids. So people who you hire that will clean up your house, that will cook for you, like do basically all the domestic duties that you should be doing. But because of the fact that the cost of having someone basically do everything for you is so relative, you would rather have somebody do that for you. I know I was accustomed to doing everything on my own here in Canada. And from like childhood, where you clean up after yourself, you wash your clothes on your own, you basically do everything. And in Zambia, obviously, you have the option of paying for somebody else to do that. Culture of having a domestic worker. I know the word maid is so derogatory, but that's the term that they use down there. Yeah, I think it's a blessing to be able to have people that would be able to do things for you, as opposed to over here where it's like if you give birth and you have a child, you get very overwhelmed. And I think that's why a lot of people go into depression, especially after having kids, because they end up having all this stuff that they have to do and like too much for one person. So yeah, that culture is something that I really, really like, but do not subscribe to. I'm able to do everything on my own. So yeah. So number 9 is power. So obviously, you guys, if you've been watching my vlog, you know that we invested in solar. So I don't have this problem, but a lot of the people back in Zambia do have a problem where it's like we have our main power supply company called Zesco. They supply power to basically everyone in Zambia, and they also supply like power to neighboring countries and whatnot. But for the most part, there's very frequent, I think the term is load shedding. So sometimes you have situations where you have power outages and like the power goes off and whatnot. And obviously here in Canada, we do not experience power outages. And most of the time, let's say if they're doing some kind of maintenance works or whatever, which is very rare, you'll have your power cut for like, let's say a few minutes to maybe at most an hour or something like that, a couple hours. But in Zambia, we have power outages called obviously load shedding, where it's like certain zones in the city, especially in Lusaka. Right, like now, Zesco has been more, how would you say, has been more better at being able to predict and let people know in different zones when the power outages will be there. But I think like years and years back, it wasn't the same. And obviously from what I know is that there's been less power outages. I would be lying if I said so. Comment down below if you're in Zambia and you still experience power outages in the areas that you're in. Is number 10, businesses or business. So I have had the privilege of starting a business here in Edmonton before, and like obviously observing other people doing business in Zambia. And I noticed that over here in Edmonton, or just in Canada in general, you have all these requirements pertaining, you know, owning a business and being able to run that business, right? And you have all these laws, all these things that can basically, how would I say, that can be able to make you more inclined to not start a business as opposed to starting a business, because obviously you have all these bills, all these things that you have to basically keep up with in order to keep that business. In Zambia, on the other hand, what I have noticed is that anybody can basically own a business, and you have people who like sell stuff on the side of the street. That's some form of business. You have people who start up shops in different parts of the area. You have like in the domestic areas, you have these little shops that are there, and then you have also shops in the malls and whatnot. And I noticed that the difference between the two is I think things are more relaxed down there as opposed to over here, and the chances of you per se succeeding as a business owner is so much more, how would I say, so much more profitable in Zambia as it is in Canada, because there's so many restrictions. I'm sure you guys are wondering which one I prefer more. I don't think I have a preference as to which one I like more. I think there are both positive and negative things in both countries. I did mention that I do love the food down in Zambia, so they take the cake for that. And obviously the systems here that have been set in place that makes life easier is something that I enjoy more in Canada. But I do hope to explore more. I haven't really done a whole lot. And I hope that I could take you guys on that journey with me when I get back to Zambia. Anyway, guys, thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel for more videos. Goodbye.